So hello everyone, and welcome to what I call as this post MBA application debriefing session. I'd like to welcome Pedro. Pedro, welcome to this debriefing session.
Thank you, Rajat. Hi everyone.
So in this session, we're going to talk about how Pedro went through his MBA journey. We're going to divide this into two parts. One is his GMAT preparation. Spend about 15% of the time on that, but majority of the time would be spent on his MBA application. And just as context, Pedro is an economist by profession. From our conversations, Pedro, you said you've been involved in the development of Cali, which is a really important city, third most important city in Colombia. Is about 2.2 million people over there, and you're really interested in that public-private partnership with regards to essentially upliftment of the masses. So Pedro, welcome to this, and you're also a professional salsa dancer, and which is a very nice thing, by the way. So I think let's start from the very beginning, and before we go there, if you guys can say in chat if you can hear us just fine, if the audio at Pedro's end is okay as well, Pedro, that'd be really good. So on the chat side, we have about 48 people over here. Is the audio coming through loud and clear? Okay, the audio is fine. We have feedback. All right, Pedro. So let's start with your GMAT preparation. So Pedro, you went through your GMAT preparation in about 6 weeks. It was really, really short time. You got a 710. You kind of recognized Quant was your strength, and you went through a very unique fashion in with regards to your preparation. Can you tell us how did you go about doing that?
Yeah, of course. I've been trying to figure out my GMAT. I was procrastinating it for, 4 or 6 months. And I saw e-GMAT, I saw the course, I saw that it was perfect for what I really wanted to do. But then I realized that the GMAT was like a race. So it didn't matter if I study 1 week and then I stopped 3 weeks and then 1 more week. It had to be like continuously. So after my birthday, what I told you in the debrief, the 31st of August, on September, I said to myself, what I'm doing, I wanted to apply with round 1. Here I am, a couple of days away from round 1 without a GMAT. So I told myself that my gift was going to be to prepare and to do and excel at the GMAT. So basically, mid-September, I was able to start my preparation. And the way in which I approached it was that I have always been really good at Quant and at math on high school and the university. So I said, okay, this is my strong section. So I'm gonna give a look to the questions, to the course, and get into those subsections that maybe have some gaps and fill them. So that's what I did for around, I will say, 8 to 10 days. I was able to get into the Quant section that e-GMAT has. I did almost most of the practice sections, and I was able to get some knowledge about speed, about mixtures and combination probability. That were a little bit of geometry and triangles. That were those themes that actually I needed to get deep into. So that's what I did. I realized that at the end of the 10 days, I was ready. So after that, I was all into the verbal section. That was what I really was struggling with. Usually, I don't know, maybe most people that get into e-GMAT has the same feeling that I did. But for Americans, the sentence correction is the easy part, and the critical reasoning is the hard part. For me, it was totally the opposite. I was excelling at the critical reasoning. I didn't even study that much for it, but the sentence correction, it was 50%. It was like a coin. So that's where I decided that I tried at the beginning to do the same that I was doing at Quant, but then I said, no, come on. I have to trust the experts. I have to trust e-GMAT and all their course, and I have a lot to learn. So I did a full course, and that's how at the end I had 8 to 10 days in which I just did all the practice questions from e-GMAT and also mostly from the official guide, following your instructions, because you guys have the questions that you have to do according to the subsection that you're doing. So that's how basically I prepare myself, and I did it on Halloween. 31st of October, 2 months after my birthday.
So hopefully you were able to ward off all your fears by Halloween, fears and symptoms correction. But yes, excellent starts in the course. And for those of you who want to understand how starts lead to success, Pedro's case is an excellent an excellent example of two things. One is how do you customize your course? And then the second is, how do you make sure that when you're learning, you actually learn well? So Pedro, one other question about your GMAT preparation, which is I think really relevant for this audience. You studied 4 hours every day. So it's a lot of time. How did you take time out? What changes did you do to your daily?
I have a full-time job, as you said, at the Economic Development Office at Cali City Hall. So basically what I did, I have a flexible schedule. So I was able to wake up in the morning around 5 a.m., a little bit more, a little bit less. It depends on the day. And I studied 2 hours in the morning. Then I went, I had my full-time job. And then when I came back, I tried to study 2 hours on the afternoon, night. So that's basically how I manage my time. And it always depended. Sometimes I studied 5 hours a day and others I studied 3 hours or 2. It depended on how heavy my day was. And once I tried to study the whole night because I was really getting into the Quant section. I was so excited. But then I was like, no, I was always doing 20 questions, 20 pop quiz questions. And I was always getting 18, 19, or 20 questions correct, which is amazing. And then around 1 in the morning, one day I was doing 12 correct out of the 20. So I was like, this is not working. And then when I realized that it was a lot better if I went to bed and woke up in the morning to study again. So that's basically how I block my schedule: 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours on the night.
And you also mentioned, I think it's really important, you mentioned that you stopped eating outside. You started cooking more foods. That gave you more time to study.
Yes. Yeah, because being at home, you start eating healthier, and also you have a lot more time to do your things. So I stopped eating outside. I reduced a little bit my workout, but I kept dancing. Yes. That's something that I will never stop. So, yep.
So let's now go to the post GMAT part of your application, and so I think let's start with, hey, what is it that motivated you to go for an MBA or a public policy kind of program, and what's driving you?
Okay, what really drives me is to do good to the public, to the public sector, to the people, to my fellow citizens. So that's what really moves me, and I think that has allowed me to be where I am right now. I had the experience to work at Colgate for around 7 months. And even though it was a great company and I will always be...
Colgate Palmolive, right?
Yes, Colgate Palmolive, yeah.
Yes.
I will always be grateful with them. I felt that something was missing. So that's why I decided to transition into the public sector and I started working there. So when I was working in the public sector, I realized that a lot of policymakers have no idea of how the private sector works. And that's why we created the public-private platform dialogue, in which public, private sector, and academia are able to get together and tell about their needs and how to fulfill them. So in that moment, I realized, this is a gap that someone has to fulfill. Because you're not always going to be able to get all these people into a room. Yeah. So maybe if you have a policymaker that actually have a lot of knowledge from the two worlds, maybe this will work better and in a more efficient way. So that's when I started to say, okay, maybe the MBA MPP is a good combination for what I want to do on my life. That is to keep helping my city and my country to develop and to reduce inequality of opportunities, to increase social mobility. That's what really moved me. I want to keep helping. And I realized that maybe with this mix that the top universities allow me to do in 3 years and not only in 4, maybe I can get there where I want to get. So That's where I realized that.
So then I think, so I see a few questions, but we'll take them towards the end. But keep for those of you who are watching it either via Facebook or via YouTube, please keep putting your questions in. We have people, members of the e-GMAT team, who are compiling those questions and will send those to me. So thank you for those questions. Now we have your your goals. Now, how did this impact the schools that you applied to?
Okay, so at the beginning, at the very beginning, I said, okay, I want to do the MPP, MBA, and the program that has the joint degree was Harvard. So
Just as a pause, MPP is Masters in Public Policy.
Yes, sir. Sorry, yes, Masters in Public Policy and the MBA. It was Harvard. They have a joint degree. So it was like, oh, maybe this is the best, like the best way to approach what my dream is. So the first university that I had to, the first school that I had to apply was HKS, that is Harvard Kennedy School. That is the School of Government of Harvard. So it was December 3rd. It was one day before we met on our debrief. And I applied. And then I realized that I was able to do a concurrent degree with Stanford, Wharton, MIT, and Harvard Business School as well. So I said, okay, these are the 4 options that I should take into account. Also, Tuck University, Dartmouth, I was able to do it, but no, I like on my options there were only these 4, and that's where I decided that those were the schools that I had to do. At that moment, I thought that the best, how do you say it? Like the best match for me was not the best match was Harvard Business School and Harvard Kennedy School. But when I started to do my research and I started to discover about the programs, it's a journey that all of you guys have to experience, and you learn a lot about yourselves, and you learn a lot about what you want to do, what you don't want to do, and even if you change on the journey, that's perfectly fine. It's normal. A lot of people does that. Even on the MBA, a lot of people change their track. And it happened to me before the MBA. I started to figure out that the best program for me was Stanford. The problem was that the program that I liked the most was the most competitive one. So you have to be realistic. Like, we all got a shot, maybe, but they asked for a really high GMAT, and they are only accepting 2 Colombians per year. Their class is...
I want to ask this question while you're doing this. So you're giving some excellent stats. 2 Colombians per year, high GMAT score, I think is very, very, it's well known. But how did you do this school research? You said this journey of discovery that you had to say, hey, there are schools that I fell in love with. So was it just secondary, or were there some other things that you did to kind of fall in love?
I got into the website. I got into YouTube sessions that they do, and like listening to the current students, it's great. It's a great way to really learn about the program. So I spend a lot of time listening to a lot of conversations between students, and I try to reach out to students that are currently doing those programs. So I was able to contact one guy that is an alumni from HKS. I contacted 2 that are current students of HBS. I contacted 1 that is a current student of Wharton, and I was not able to contact a student from Stanford. Because a Colombian or Latin American, because they are so scarce that it's really hard to find them. So that's the way in which I learn. Students on the internet, on their website and YouTube, I spend a lot of time.
So Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, and Harvard, HKS, HBS, Stanford, Wharton.
Yes.
These schools really high GMAT scores. How did you figure out that 710 would be enough for these schools?
Actually, when I got the 710, it was a mix of emotions, because at the beginning, my goal was to get a 700. But before the GMAT, I was scoring 740 on my mock test, on the official mock test. So when I got the 710, that, as I told you, it was because I don't know what happened to me. I wasn't able to answer the last 2 questions of Quant. And even with that, like on the break, on the 8 minutes break that you got, I was so disappointed. I was like, oh man, I have to do again the GMAT. And then I relaxed, and then I even had like 2.5 minutes on verbal, which I never had. So it happened what never happened to me on the mock test. I had a lot of time on verbal, and I didn't have enough time on Quant. So at the end, with the 710, that's why I had a mix of emotions. I think that I could have got more because of my preparation, because I really had a great preparation because of you guys. But then at the end, I said, okay, let's figure out if this is enough. So as I told you, I contacted with some Colombians that are doing these programs, and the 2 Colombians that are doing the MBA at HBS, both of them had 710.
Oh. That's good. That's a good start. Yes.
And they told me like, oh man, how many times did you did the GMAT? Was like, I don't know, one. And they were like, oh, I did it 4 times. And the other one, the girl said like, I did it 5 times.
Wow.
So actually, I'm grateful because I spoke to Christian, that's his name, from HBS. He was the one that told me, you have a great profile, and maybe if you get a little bit higher GMAT, you can get it to Stanford. Stanford, you will match perfectly. So actually, he was the first person that told me that. And then at the end of my journey, I texted him and was like, oh man, that's amazing. I knew that you could do it. He said, like, that was my dream school, but I didn't have the mix that maybe you do. So go for it, and please keep me like posted in what happens with you. So that's how I figured out that it was enough. Well, you never know if it's enough. That's how I figured out that I have a shot.
You never know if it's enough. So I think, so now let's kind of go to the 2 schools that you've gotten an admission into. So just for the context, when accepted at Harvard Kennedy School, you've been accepted at Stanford. You're waitlisted at Wharton right now.
Yes, sir.
And you've been rejected by HBS.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about one essay question from HKS, and which I found really interesting, and the second one from Stanford. And so we're going to really look at, and I want you to tell me how you approach these questions, and then and what did you actually write in these questions. So I'm going to read out the first question over here, and I'm going to show that question as well on the screen. So the Harvard Kennedy School motto, echoing the president, I mean, it's basically John F. Kennedy in his famous speech. He said, ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. So it's along the same lines. Ask what you can do. And the question says, please share with the admissions committee your plans to create a positive change through your public leadership and service. So how did you approach this question? And then what did you write over here?
It was storytelling, to be honest. I basically said about my story. So now that I saw that there was a question of how many years I have of experience. So I have almost 4 years of experience, like 3 years and 10 months of experience, both the private and public sector. So basically I told the story. I told the story of how coming from Colombia, how having displaced grandparents, how having a kidnapped and never seen again sister motivated me to work to the better good for the country, because I really didn't want other families to suffer what I did suffer. And to be honest, what happened to me is a really little thing compared to what happened to a lot of families in Colombia. They have to live in poverty, that they have to live in inequality, that they are displaced themselves. I wasn't, my grandparents were, but there are a lot of struggle here in Colombia. So when I started to realize what really moved me and why I wanted to do the things that I wanted to do, and why I'm in the public sector, and why I want to keep doing this track and keep helping people, it was really easy to be basically telling the story, who I am, what I have done, what classes I want to take at HKS, and telling what I want to do afterwards. So I told them my plan, because they ask you about the plan that you have. So I told them, to be honest, after my HKS experience, I want to transition into consulting, work into private consulting firm as McKinsey, and approach the public problems on the private sector, having all the resources, because I don't know how it's in your countries, but in my country, the public sector doesn't have enough resources to do what they are supposed to do. So sometimes we didn't have internet. Sometimes the electricity was out.
The fundamental infrastructure.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also the human capital is not that great in the public sector because of the politicians and all how the politic world works. So basically, I want to keep working on this track, but maybe with the accurate and correct infrastructure to learn more, to have a deeper knowledge in everything, and then come back and keep helping in the way I can. So I said that I want to keep working on the public sector and get into my dream, that is to become a Minister of Commerce of Colombia and address in a national level all the different problems and situations that the citizens have.
So post your your joint degree, which is what you thought of doing at that time, you said, okay, I'm going to go work for a consulting firm, but work in the government sector and the government side of business for a few years, learn from there where you have the right infrastructure, where you have the right mindset, what is possible, understand that, and then go all the way to back to Columbia to make that change happen.
Yes.
At a high level. Something from your heart.
Yeah, okay. No, I was really honest. Honesty here, I think it plays a major role. Because I told the story, maybe it was not the best story, maybe it was, maybe a lot of people tell something better, but it was from my heart and from what I really want to do. Like at the end, if you tell your story and you get accepted, they're accepting you. What if they accept another Pedro and then I get there and it's not what they were expecting for? And then, so I don't know, I think that was the way in which I approached the essay questions, even though the essays are so demanding of time and I even had dreams with my essays. I think that was the best part because of the introspection that you get. Mm-hmm. So even though it's hard, it's really hard, you're able to actually speak from your heart and then things start to get easier.
I think we're going to touch upon another part, which is later on, which is your Stanford interview. So, and if you have essays from your heart, I think it also helps over there. So, and again, the reason why this question is difficult is, for those of you who've read JFK's speech, which he gave on in 1961 on 20th of Jan, it's an amazing speech and it's a moving speech, and you've got to really say, man, I've got to fill these shoes. But yes, good job, Pedro. So let's go to Stanford's question. And the question really is, what matters most to you? Help us understand why. It's such an open-ended question.
It is.
And Stanford doesn't have a ton of questions. So this is kind of like a piece where you have to really push your candidacy. It's like 40% of the application part is this question. So how did you approach this?
I had out of introspection, I spoke to my family, to the people that really knows me, and I start to sharing with them what I thought that really matters to me. And I start asking them, what do you think that matters to me? Just to have an idea. It doesn't matter if that's correct or not. I just want to know what you guys think. And then they gave me their feedback. And then when they asked, I was like, no, I'm going to tell you whenever I have my final answer. So I did some feedback with my family and I did a lot of introspection. And then I was like, what really matters to me? That's a great question.
What matters to you? I think let's just ask this question now.
To help people.
To help people. Okay.
Yes. To create a better country and to create the conditions necessary to create a more prosperous and equal country for everyone. So helping people. I was between helping people and my family, which is really important to me as well. But at the end, I figure out that actually I have helped my family as well, and helping people is broader. So that's why I picked it. And that's how I approached the essay. Actually, it was a really a personal essay telling how I have been involved in my brother's life. He just turned 18 2 weeks ago. So I told them how I have always encouraged him, how we had a situation in which there were he played soccer in a really good level, and how I found that there were, at the end, they're not only your ability, what determines the future that you're going to have, but also your economic background, which was really hard to me. And then we did crowdfunding, we helped them to pursue their dreams. And I have been involved in the university with extracurriculars, with my family, with my cousins, with neighbors, helping them to know what they to give advice and mentoring them. So I was part of the student council. I even did the same on the dancing group, and then that's how I figure out that helping others was really moved me and what matters to me the most.
So this is something which is, I think, very interesting to me. Why? Because this is Stanford's question. Stanford is kind of like the business school when it comes to business. It's in Silicon Valley or right next to San Francisco, and your answer has very little to do with business. But what you really say is, this is what matters most to me, and this is what I did to make sure that I you talked about the crowdfunding piece. You talked about helping communities. Otherwise, you give examples over there. So it doesn't truly have to be business. It as long as you're passionate about it, what you're really telling me is, despite a low GMAT score, a school such as Stanford will take you.
I think that a really good way to complement what you said is that the second question of Stanford is why Stanford. So if you want to talk about business, and if you want to say why really Stanford, why you need them, there's the place in which you have to do it. Maybe the part when they ask you what really matters to you the most, I think that they're willing to know that what really matters to you. So speak from your heart, tell your story, and have confidence that if it's your real story and it's personal enough, you'll get to their hearts. And I think that's, I don't know if this is the correct way to say it, but I think that Stanford is the most human business program in the world. So maybe that's what they really want to know, like from you. Well, at the end, it looks like it worked for me. So I was honest and I said from my heart, and yeah.
So I, at this point, we are about 26 minutes into the interview. We have another 20 minutes or so. I'm going to go through a couple of more questions. But for those of you who are attending, if this is something that is relevant to you, you can like this. If there are other questions, we are going to do a series of interviews. If there are other questions that you want to ask in the future interviews, you're going to do about 15 of those. You can send those to me or put those questions over here. So I think then the next question, Pedro, is how did you approach your letter of recommendation? So I mean, who did you ask for them, and how did you make sure that those people were aware of your goals?
Well, at HKS, I had to ask for 3 letters of recommendation, and at the business schools, there are 2 of them. So I asked for HKS, my tutor, for my thesis tutor from HKS University, Luisa Bernat. And she really knows me. She gave me.
When you said tutor, it's the guide, basically.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. We did the thesis together.
Okay.
And so she really knows me. She has given me classes, and she knows me from an academic perspective, which is really good, like to show it to HKS. Maybe not that good to like for MBA, but for HKS it was really good. And then for the MBAs, I used the other 2 letters of recommendation. The first one was Diego Guerrero. He's an international consultant that has worked in the World Bank, that has worked in France. He's currently working in Belgium, like doing cooperation for developing countries. And he was an advisor on the Economic Development Office. I had the chance to work with him. He was my kind of supervisor. And he really knew me. He met me and he knew me for, I would say, like 8 months of work. And I asked him because, first of all, he really knows about this world. He understands, he gets me. And I think that we were a really good match and that he could tell some stories that will help me a lot. And the second one was my boss. My boss, that was Angelica Mayolo. She was the head of the Economic Development Office for a little bit more than a year.
At Cali?
Yes, here in Cali. And she was my second letter of recommendation. So I really struggle a lot because at the beginning you think that you need to get top people to get your letter of recommendation. So I don't know if your boss knows someone that knows the president, maybe you think that getting a letter from the president of the country is the best, or from the president of your company, or or from someone that has get into the top MBA program that you want to get. But that's not really like true. You need to get people because they said it on the videos that they give you, like teaching you how you should approach your application process. I don't know. I think that most of us don't believe that how honest they are. So they really want people that knows you. Like none of them has gone to a top business school. None of them have even an MBA. All of them are from Colombia. So at the end, I think that it's not about who, but about what they say on your recommendation letters. So
but they should know you in the end.
No, they have to really know you.
They have to really know you. Yes.
Yeah, because they have to go deep into the questions that they gave you and to tell like particular stories that are going to help you craft a great application. Sometimes applicants don't realize how important it is for your application of the story that someone else is telling about you. So the way in which I approached them was I had the chance to speak like directly to Angelica because we were working together. So I went to her office and I asked her. We spoke. She was really open. She congratulated me for the GMAT and for like taking this step on my career. And she said, absolutely, I will do it. And then with the other two, I had to call them because they are not here. One is in Bogota, and my professor is in Bogota, and Diego lives in Belgium. So I did Skype calls with them, and I told them about my story. Actually, I spent more time with them than with Angelica.
I can imagine that, and I think it's so for people who are listening who've not yet applied to programs. I mean, a letter of recommendation is a very daunting exercise. Having done LORs, for e-GMATers, and in a couple of weeks we're going to have an interview for someone who actually got about $200,000 worth of scholarships or into several top B schools. And I can tell you, it's a lot of work to do an LOR. So if the recommender doesn't know you, it's you're not going to get a good LOR. There's very little chance that you're going to get one. So definitely choose someone who knows you. So 2 questions, Pedro. One is, how did you prepare for the interviews? And then we'll talk about after that, how did you handle the HKS rejection? So how did you prepare for the interviews?
Well, when you get to the interviews, actually, this is a fun part because I just saw 2 days ago the Stanford video of helping you guys, like helping the next applicants to approach their application, and I saw that they actually gave the question that I was given on my interview, and is what you are like most proud of and why.
Yeah,
they keep doing really like deep questions, and the way in which I prepare, I worked with a consultant with the Square One Prep. They were really good. I highly recommend them. And they gave me questions. I also did my research and I started practicing questions. But you can't over practice because they want to know you, the person, not a robot that knows all the answers to the questions systematically. So it was a way in which I was able to like refresh my memory about all these stories that could give like a good insight of leadership, of communication skills, like your weaknesses, your strengths, all this. And I practiced with some friends and with my girlfriend. She was listening to me one day before and was telling her like the answers of the questions, but in a really relaxed way in which it should be. Like, you can't over practice that. That's an advice that I can give you. So that's how I prepared with the consultant.
You actually spoke the answers out. You made sure they were coming out right, and you knew them inside out.
Yes. Okay. Yes. And also I tried to time myself because I might speak a lot. I don't know if you have seen it, but you need to be to the point. You can't give really broad answers. So that's how I prepared.
Okay. Then let's go to the last question, which is, how did you handle the HBS rejection?
It was February the 4th. It was hard because HBS is the first MBA that gives interview invitations, and I didn't get one. I was really disappointed. But the thing that most disappointed me was that if I knew before, if they told me, hey, there's one school that's going to reject you and it's not going to give you an interview, I would have said Stanford. Because Stanford, it's so hard to get in. It's so hard to get an interview that I will say that. But when I get a no from HBS, it was not only that I crossed HBS, but also I thought that Stanford was not going to give me an interview. And the problem is that at Stanford, they spend more than a month. It's like from February the 10th to March the 11th. To send the interview invites, so it was like, oh my God, I'm gonna suffer for 1 month and maybe I will not get one. But I was lucky enough. So I was with my family. I gathered all my family. We were together, and then at 12 at noon, I get into the website and I wasn't out. So I told them. They didn't believe me. They were mad. They were pissed. And I was like, this is really hard because I don't know. My family thinks that I think that all the families of all of us, they think that we're the best of the world, so they can't handle that someone is rejecting you or that you don't get to a place. So they were, oh, but you're so good. And I'm like, yes, I might be so good, I might be really good, but there are people that are better than me. That's it. So it was not. I didn't break myself. I kept the track. I still had to do some essays from HKS to apply for financial aid. And what I did was like I focused on that. I focused on spending time with my family, on my work, on what was really important to me. And I said, okay, let's wait, because Wharton is gonna give me the answer on the 13th of February. So 9 days later, and maybe Stanford is gonna give me a call soon. You never know. And I was so lucky, man, that Stanford called me. Well, they sent me an invite 1 week later, exactly 1 week, February 11th. I cried 2 times on the application. The first one, well, 3 times. When I was writing an essay that really like got into me, when I got the interview at Stanford, and when Stanford called me saying yes.
You have it.
So actually, it was. In that moment I realized what I really wanted, because I realized that I really wanted to go to Stanford, and how it moved like everything on me. When I cried, it was doing the Stanford essay as well. So Stanford made me cry 3 times. It was worth it. We'll do it again.
I think so. Yes. I think there are lots of people who, if they get into Stanford over here, they wouldn't mind crying 10 times. So yes, but yes, it's an amazing school. So it's 9:07, 7 minutes past our scheduled time with regards to what we said. But there are a few questions that we have. We've talked about your work experience over here. So Mohit says, did you work on your application along with your GMAT preparation, or did you do one after?
No, I didn't. I knew that I had to ace the GMAT, and then I had to do my application. That was the way in which I approached it. And that was good for me because, as I said, I had a full-time job, and I really wanted to ace the GMAT as soon as, you really want to ace the GMAT as soon as you can. Because if you prepare yourself and you're doing it for 1 week, 2 weeks, and then you stop, let's say, to craft an essay, and then you come back 2 weeks later, or even 1 week, you lose it. It's like when you're gonna do a race with you're preparing and then you stop for any reason, and then when you come back, you're not as good as you were in your perfect point, in your perfect timing. So my advice will be to first ace the GMAT and then pass into the application.
And it works for GMAT and the application both. I mean, this is not like neither one of them is like a relay race where you can stop and then start again. No. It is, you are the only one who's racing. So if you stop, you have to pick up momentum again. You don't want to spend that time doing that. There's another question, which is how much impact did GPA have? I don't know if GPA is the only component that have, but I think your profile had a major impact on your application. But
yeah, maybe in Colombia, our grades are from 0 to 5. I got a 478 GPA, and I got a summa cum laude degree. So out of the 40 years of the story of the history of the university, there has only been 17 summa cum laude out of more than 20 or 30,000 of alumni. So I think that I really had a really good background. So I think it helped me. Your GPA is a way to complement your academics. Like the GPA and the GMAT, they show how strong you are and if you are gonna be able to handle the academics at Stanford or Harvard or whatever you're applying. So I think that it helped, but it was not the most important thing. The most important at the end, I think, that will be how you tell the story. And I think that the GMAT is not gonna take you there, because I have known people that get 770 and they get rejected. But I think that the GMAT is gonna give you a shot. It's not gonna get you into the schools, but they're gonna give you the chance. Because if I got let's say 620, then maybe, Pedro, great GPA, great stories, great everything, but maybe I will not be here. So I think that the GMAT is also one more. It gives you a chance to actually.
Yeah, I think it's everything tells a story. For me, when you have a GMAT score, when you have a GPA. So I mean, for you, consistent GPA, what does it tell you? It tells you, despite the fact that you had according to most of us, you had a difficult background. According to you, you didn't compare to other people in Colombia, but despite that, you've been consistent. You've been among the top 17 or top 20 people out of 20,000 people. So it shows something about your character. And now the other things also add up to that story, which is who's Pedro. So for me, when I look at the GPA, GMAT is one event and it tells you you're bright if you have a great score. But a GPA says you're not just bright, but you're consistently bright.
Yes, that's true.
So because GPA is built over a longer time. So, but at the same time, if you don't have a great GPA, but you have really good work ethics after that. So if you've demonstrated that consistency at work, there are ways to overcome a low GPA, but you have to show consistency. We have another a couple of other questions. So I think Oriv John says, I used to be enrolled in the low-ranked universities, but I wasn't satisfied with my study. Can I apply again? So I can really answer that. A lot of people from India do that. They do a second MBA, and schools understand that completely. There's probably, you're gonna be fine. Is what I would say. Doing a second MBA, or even if you didn't complete one, that's fine too. Pedro, I don't know if you want to add to that.
No, I think that at the end, if you show them why the MBA is going to help you and help your plans and help you impact your future professional path, I think that it's perfectly fine. If you're able to show that and that you really need it, there are a lot of people that actually make that. I even met one at Wharton that actually had done an MBA and he was in another one.
Yeah, and there's lots of people do that. So night before the GMAT exam, what was your experience? What did you do in general? That's another question that we have over
here. Well, the night before the GMAT, I tried to be as cool as possible because, of course, I was nervous. I had to fly, so I went to Bogota. I stayed on a hotel that was close to the place that I had to get the test into. And basically I got there, I had a meal, I relaxed, and I had a notebook with my notes. So that's what I did the last day. I took my notes and I kind of reviewed my notes, but in a really easy and peaceful way, because if you're not prepared on your whole GMAT journey, you're not gonna make it the last night. It's only gonna harm you, your process, your score, your everything. So I think that the most important is to trust on yourself, have confidence, trust on if you work with e-GMAT and you have excelled at their questions, and if you have done all the course and you have followed Rajat's instructions, I think that you are all set.
It's not my instructions, but yes, the team's instructions.
Well, the program that you guys have made, I think it's great the way in which you have organized everything. I think it's perfect, and I will always be grateful with Rajat and all the e-GMAT team for having that. So I think that if you have done that, if you have answered accurately the questions, I think that you should not be stressed. Actually, the GMAT was really similar to the questions that you do on the official guide and that you do on e-GMAT website. So really, it's really similar. It's it was for me doing one mock test with all the pressure, but one mock test. The questions were really similar. So that's how I prepared.
So some very interesting questions which I also want to take on. But before that, we will be doing about 15 such interviews. We have one which is next Wednesday. It should be coming up as a link from e-GMAT on your screens. So register for them. If there are other business schools that you want covered, so we plan to cover Kellogg, we plan to cover Wharton, we plan to cover Kelly, Keenan Flagler, and a bunch of other schools. But if there are business schools that you want to see covered in this, do let us know. And we'd be happy to cover those business schools given the number of students we have, and B, will be happy to actually ask questions that that you would want us. Okay. So two very interesting questions. One is, what's the weirdest question that you got from admission officers?
they were not weird, really. Like in the whole process.
Let's call it what is most challenging. Let's not call it weird. I think what was the one that you had to really think deep and say
what matters the most to you? That's the one. That's really hard. That was really challenging. But weird, like, okay, maybe he was, because the application, the essay questions, we all know them, so you can like Google them. But maybe on the interview, you are like concerned about the questions. They really are easy. At Wharton, they just ask, why MBA, why Wharton? That's it. You have 10 minutes to speak why. And at Stanford, they actually gave the question before, and I didn't realize until like 2 days ago, that was, what is the most, what makes you most proud of, like professionally? And then they go really deep into those questions. I had only 2 questions at Stanford, but we spoke like for, I don't know, like 40 minutes or maybe more into only 2 questions. So they ask you why, how, that they want to really know how is the way that you live, how you approach like to the different things that you do in life, and they really want to know if it's a true story, maybe because I don't know, maybe people make stories up, but and in the way they ask you, they will crack you. That's for sure. If you lie, they will crack you. But if you are telling you like the honest answers, you're gonna be fine, totally fine. They're not weird. Like, they are trying to accept you. They are not trying to reject you. They are trying to find reasons to accept you. And I think that we should all like take that into account, maybe, because most of the times you are like, oh, what if they're going to figure out that I have 1 semester with a low GPA? What if I have a gap in my experience? What if you explain, it's perfectly fine. They are going to try to find reasons to accept you. So that will be my advice.
So here's a question about GMAT preparation, and I'm going to actually, which is, did you practice more or mainly focus on concepts part in Quant? So I think, Ritik, I'm going to answer this question because I have looked at Pedro's account, and the link that I'm sharing, that one actually has this debrief where his account is shared. So what Pedro did was, he had, in Quant, we have 5 subsections. He had subsections where he needed to learn the concept. He had subsections where he just needed practice. And where he needed to learn the concepts, he learned the concepts and then went through application files and practice quizzes. But where he just needed to practice, what you would see in his account is that he just went through the practice application files and practice quizzes. So he didn't even touch the concept files. So there are some courses where he's done just half the course and all he has done is concept and application files. There are others where he's done most of it. And that's something which is a level of personalization that we allow you to do. On the verbal side, in sentence correction, for example, he's done pretty much everything. He's not left anything out because he had to start from scratch.
Since the beginning, yeah.
So, okay. I am going to look at a few other questions. So this is one over here, which is, I think you can read Apurva's question. And I think Suhaib has a really good answer as well to this one.
You want me to answer that question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, basically, your whole story, what really matters to you, your professional experience, it's a huge deal. Like, personally, I thought that it was not at the beginning of the process, and I will say like 8 months ago or 9 months ago, I thought that the most important thing was the GMAT and were my transcripts, and that's it. But then you start to figure out that everything matters, and I will say that your story, your authenticity, your extracurriculars, your volunteering experience, your work experience, what you have done in your work, it really matters to you. And I will say that because at the Economic Development Office, it's like I would say a plain and flat structure. It's not really a way like on a usual company that you can like go up into the structure. So personally, I have been on the same job for 3 years and it didn't hire me. So a lot of people say, oh, I am not going to apply to business school because maybe I have to wait until I get a better job. Not really. If you are able to craft your story, if you have your GMAT, you should give it a shot. If you think that it's at the end, it matters like how ready you feel. If you feel that you're ready, you should go for it. And I think that all criteria are important. Absolutely all of them. So your TOEFL, for me, the TOEFL played a major role, because if I didn't get more than 100, I would not be able to apply. I got a 117, so I was good enough. Even though they say that they don't have a minimum GMAT, if I don't know, most of us know that you should be around 700s, and if you are on the upper 700s, you have a lot more chances. If you have a 780 but you don't have a really good experience, or like a work experience or a story to tell, or if you're not able to transmit why you need an MBA, why you want to go there, why you are unique, why you are a perfect match to each other, then your 780 and the GMAT is going to be for the memories, because it's going to be that helpful. So I will say everything.
Okay, so I have another question, which is, I think it's Cody's question. I'm going to put it over here, and his question in a sense is, hey, if you're a consultant, if you're not someone who's working within a company, and a consultant manages a lot of projects, and he or she doesn't essentially execute a particular project to the end. So how do you show the impact, or how do you show yourself as an effective change agent in that case? So Pedro, the thing which is, as a consultant, you give advice, but you don't execute on it completely, especially strategy consultants.
Yes.
So in that case, if you're applying to a business school, you've been a consultant, you're really giving advice, and people taking, or other companies taking that advice and then executing on it. So how do you, as an individual, become an effective change agent? So I can take a crack at it, Cody. So I think one thing which is there is, as a consultant, your career progression shows the value that you've added. And I think even though you may be a consultant, if you worked for one of the big companies, you, within McKinsey itself or within Bain itself, you will be a change agent, because you're coaching people who are in the same consulting team. So you are making that impact over there. You may not directly be able to make an impact with regards to the customer who you're working with. The other piece is, if you've worked in a project long enough, and if you know that project has had a successful outcome,
then you can say that was the impact.
Yeah, then you can really use that as an example. You can get a letter of recommendation from that customer to really say how your inputs helped enable them execute that change. Because in the end, leadership is about bringing about change.
Yeah, and I think I would like to add that change and impact, they're like in all different areas. It's not only about the work, but what if you are like at McKinsey and you're helping with your work environment, or you're giving advice or mentoring someone that has just entered to the consulting firm. I think that all those kind of stories can help you and can show how you are a good leader, how you lead, because that's important, that you discover how you lead and how you do and how you approach things. So I think that at the end, it's everything. It's not only the impact of the work, but with the people as well. That's what I would like to add.
And in the end, which is kind of ties into the next question, which is, I think, in my opinion, a similar question, which is that, hey, you can be a consultant, but if no one takes your advice, then you're not influencing people. But if people are taking your advice, if even top leaders at companies, who are probably the most stubborn of people in many ways, take your advice, then you are able to bring about change. You may not be able to execute what you've advised, but you're able to bring about your change. And Priyamvada says, Stanford prefers an entrepreneurship story. What's your view on it? I think Stanford prefers you being able to bring about change. Whether it as an entrepreneur.
The model of the university, change the world, change organizations. Yeah. So at the end, I think that that's the most important thing of all, that you're able to show how you're going to change the world. I think that it's change people, change the world, change organizations, change people. I think there are three changes. And I think that if you are able to show that, then all the stories are going to be perfect. I think my background is not an unusual consultant or entrepreneur background. I come from the public sector. As I said before, it looks like they only accept 2 or 3 Colombians per year, and they chose me. Maybe they also want to have diversity, and they also want to have like different views. And if you're able to show how you want to change the world with your ideas and with your professional path and how you have done it in the past and how you're going to do it in the future, I think that you're all set and you have a shot, even if you are not an entrepreneur. as you're asking.
Yeah, I think it's about change. It's about being able to bring about change. I'm going to take that one last question because we're 10 minutes over time, and this was actually from one of our former students. And his question is, how did you see competition from other students? Did it affect you?
How do you see competition from other? I don't understand.
I mean, other people who were aiming for a spot at Stanford.
I don't know anyone. I personally, it's, I don't know, maybe on your background you're used to be doing your MBA application and your friends are doing it as well. In my case, I don't know if that's good or bad. I was the only one around me. From my friends, I am the only one that has done something like this. On my university, I have been the only one that has tried to get into the top.
But Pedro, let's say you had a couple of people with you. Would it have changed your stories at all?
No, my stories, no.
Stories are your stories, right?
Your stories are your stories, but
yeah.
I think that his question is, what if I'm doing my story and I think that the story of the person that is next to me is better? You should
judge. Right?
You don't know it. You are not the one that is judging the story. You are not the one that is accepting people. So just go for it. Don't try to look. You have to be authentic and you have to speak from your heart. So I will say that that's the key. Don't try to be someone else that you are not. And you should not care how many people are around you and how many people are applying and what are their stories. Just focus on your story. That's the most important thing of all.
Just and I want to kind of draw a parallel with regards to the authenticity and the moving part of stories, how important that is. So I heard this year 2008. You were into the largest downturn that we had seen at that point with regards. We were going into the Great Recession. That was considered the biggest recession after the Great Depression in 1929. And you're sitting at Harvard, and that 2008 recession was brought about by essentially businessmen, right? People who are in the financial sector.
Yes.
And so at Harvard had invited all its alumni to get endowment money. And at a point where business schools, people who got out of business schools were the one who brought about the recession. So how the hell do they get those people to open their purses out? Instead of what they did was they actually had stories of people where Harvard graduates who graduated out who had created like prosthetics that enabled a person to walk, had created other innovations that had made change. I mean, they essentially brought tears in the eyes of attendees, and despite it being 2008, 2009, they got record endowments. And so, I mean, it's about moving people with your story.
That's true.
And that's kind of where I would recommend that you focus on, not worry as much about what is this guy doing, because ultimately that's going to take your focus away from you, communicating your story, which is, I think, this is probably something which goes into the next question, which is going to be the last question for the day.
What advice will you give to someone concerned to HBS? I think that the advice will be kind of the same for almost all programs. Yeah. Just the question of HBS is, what else do you want us to know about you? I think that good advice, even I didn't get an interview, but for sure, I think that like doing all this process, a good advice is to don't overlap the information. So if your CV already tells a lot about your professional life, you don't want to use what else do you want us to know?
To us to know about you, yes.
To say the same that they already know, because they really want to know something different. So try to tell your story, try to be unique, authentic, and at the end, these top schools, I think that both HBS and Stanford, if they like you, you're in. It's if they really like your story, you get in. It doesn't matter if you're the only person from that country, or it doesn't matter if you're the only person in that industry, or it doesn't matter if you don't have the perfect GMAT or the perfect transcripts. At the end, if you're unique, authentic, and if you're able, as Rajat said, to get into their hearts with your story, then you're gonna make it. So I think that that's the most important thing of all, to be able to craft your story in a unique and authentic way.
Okay. All right, guys. With that, I want to thank everyone for being here. And as I said, so I want to thank Pedro first of all. You took that hour out to prep for this interview. We talked about these questions up front, and thank you for your responses. And then I wish you good luck. I hope I know your heart set on Stanford. I hope you also get that invite from Wharton and scholarships. So, but having said that, as I said, we have another interview next week, and we're going to do at least one of these a week. So, if you've not subscribed to the channel, do that. And if you want us to take a few schools that I've not mentioned, then do write to me, and then we'll get students from those schools, or we'll try and get students from those schools over there. But thank you, Pedro, and it was great talking to you again.
Thank you, Rajat, for the opportunity. Thank you, everyone, for your wishes, for everything, and for being here listening to my story. And good luck to everyone in your application process.
Bye-bye.
Bye.